But they'd come home from school and he'd be waiting for them and he'd say, let's do your homework. And if you know this math problem, I'm going to give you $1. And we loved money in our house. And so they tried really hard and they'd get $1. Well, they grew up and my children love him so much. They grew up and my dad would spend hours. It was as if he had nothing else to do but be interested in them and love them. And he would teach them life skills. And some of the skills he taught them, how to drive a car. And every grandchild knows that story. It was very serious, almost like you were entering a cockpit. And he taught them how to sell a car and buy a car. You don't just buy a car, you say, why are you selling this car? And how are the tires? And did you do your oil changes? And he said, and he taught them how to wash a car. That's another word we never changed. And one of the I hear him in my kitchen right now. He would teach him he taught him how to ask a girl out on a date. And he had a friend in college named Dick Hawley, and he would imitate. He had a horrible delivery on asking a girl out for a date. So he would say, let me tell you how not to ask a girl. Hi, this is Dick Hawley. And I just hear him, and he would tell the same story every time, and we'd laugh and laugh. And he taught them how to use their money. He would send them books to read. Across the board, my kids all said, I remember Grandpa taking a great interest in me and spending time with me. I loved him for that. He was my children's biggest cheerleader. When you're a mom and you have 8 kids, you are just beaten down half the time. And Grandpa would come and just cheer them all on. And one of my daughters said, Grandpa always made me feel like I was his very favorite. And I think everyone felt that way. I had one son, he said that, I remember him saying, Grandpa, I'm a senior in high school and I'm so scared to go to college. He was accepted at BYU because I'm not going to make it there. I'm so scared. Everyone's so smart. And this is what Grandpa said to him. Grandpa said, everything is competitive and there is always room at the top. And he spent hours with him saying, sit on the front row, talk to the professor, don't go back to the dorm until you're finished with your homework, chew gum during a test. He just spent hours teaching my kids about life. And one of my children's favorite quotes is, I can't believe they pay me to fly. And this particular child really had a hard time coming up with a profession. And he said, well, I'm not passionate about that. And finally I figured it out. Chuck was so unusual about his career. Nobody wakes up, do any of you men or women wake up and say, I can't believe they pay me to go to work? Chuck is probably the only one on the earth, so I think that's why this child had such a big problem deciding on his profession, because he thought he was supposed to feel like that. No, you don't. But, so we had one of my daughter-in-laws. It was the first time Chuck was meeting, and she was one of the first daughter-in-laws. And this is what she said. She says, I always remember sitting knee to knee with him while he questioned me about my credit history and my family health history. I knew I had to be part of her family from that moment on. I remember the whole family running and they go, Chuck is knee to knee to Sarah. And I said, well, she's either going to catch a bus or she's going to join the family. So let's just not worry about it because Chuck is Chuck. You're not going to change his mind. Another daughter-in-law said, Chuck is a legend and a hero. So happy to know him and be part of his family. He was always at the crossroads. I'm almost done. I know I'm hogging, but I'm so passionate about him as a grandpa. And he said he was at almost everybody's wedding. He broke his back once, so he didn't make it to Colton's. But he was at all their missionary farewells and all their homecomings. And Dallin is still out there, but I said, he'll be there in spirit. I promise you. He will not miss a party. And oftentimes, like Randy said, he would send a little pick-me-up check in the mail and say, for date money only, and just loved us and cared about us and took such good care of us. And in closing, I had this little grandchild of mine, and he would walk around the house saying, Grandpa Chuck is so good to us, because he'd hear his parents say it all the time. I just want to thank my dad and Grandpa Chuck for being so good to us. And when I think of him, he will be known for generations. His great life, his great stories. I love him with all my heart. And I know because of the plan of salvation, we will make more memories together. And I testify of this in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen. So one thing Christy didn't tell you after she beat up the neighborhood bully was she came in the door and said, well, I just beat the hell out of Jimmy. That was my dad's favorite part. Sorry. Anyway, so my dad, I lived up in High Desert for years and years before my parents ever got here. And so they would visit us. My mom and dad would come up and visit us sometimes. And this one particular night, they were spending the night. And he came up and he said, look at this car. And we talked about how much he loves this car, second to airplane. And he had gotten two things that he's proud of. A really good deal on a deluxe paint job. And so we went around and looked at it. It was gorgeous. And went to bed that night. And at that time, I was training for a marathon. So it was still dark outside, about 4:30 in the morning. I went to, I pulled out of the garage really quiet, so I didn't wake anyone up. And I felt and heard a loud screeching. And I ripped the whole side of his car, his brand new paint job, and I was so beside myself that I went inside the house, and he was sitting on the couch, and he was doing some paperwork for work. And he said, what are you doing up? I said, oh, I'm going for a run. I couldn't say anything. I went back out and back in 3 times when he finally said, what is going on? And I said, well, something really bad happened. And he said, well, honey, what happened? And I said, I just ruined your car. And he goes, well, you dumbbell, what'd you do that for? And I just said, and then the second thing he did was just comfort me. He just felt so bad that I felt bad, that he just did everything to let me know, it's okay, quit crying, it's okay. And I know it's a silly story about a car, but I knew how much that car meant to him. And at that moment, he showed me that I meant so much more. So there was also a time when I went over to visit him once they moved up to Apple Valley. I went to visit him because his back hurt so much. He was hobbling around and in so much pain. And when I went over there, I ended up getting a really bad headache. Like it was verging on a migraine, which I get sometimes. And he always felt so bad when I got headaches. And something you need to know about my dad, because he was taught by his mom that there's not any ailment that can be helped with a good soapy enema or a Coke. And for me, fortunately, headaches, the Coke was the go-to. I just remembered it started coming on, and here he was hobbling, and he just felt so bad. He goes, honey, I feel so bad. What can I do for you? I said, no, I'm fine. I was just so nauseous at the time. And I still remember, he goes, I'm going to go get a Coke. So he hobbled. I didn't know how to go to the store. He was hobbling so hard, and I still remember watching him walk in that front door with a big six-pack and hobbling over, and I swear he force-fed me 3 Cokes. I don't think I slept for days. And he rubbed my neck, and he kept saying, do you feel better? Do you feel better? And that was my dad in a nutshell. He was always putting himself second to other people's feelings. No matter what, he couldn't stand for people to feel bad. And he was like that with, like Randy and my siblings have said, he was like that with people he just met, with total strangers. And I wish I have so many funny stories of times that he's done that. But the thing I always love is watching my mom and dad. And I remember my mom saying, I knew by watching your dad how he treated his mother and his sisters that he would always take such good care of me. And one of my favorite stories was that when they were dating, she would work really late at night. And so he would go park his car and hide the key under the mat so that when she came out of work, she could get home safely. And then he would just walk home. And just sweet. He just took such good care of her all the time. And it was really fun to watch them together. And, you know, at the end, it was getting so hard that we were all really worried about my mom because she was, I just was worried about her because it was a lot. And she said, you know, your dad's taken such good care of me, I want to take good care of him. And she would have died doing it if she had to, because she wanted to give back what she'd received so much of. And
a few days before he died, he was able to be in his home in a bed, and a few days before he died, my mom went in and said, "How's my baby doing?" And he whispered back to her and said, "Your baby's just fine." And that was the last time he ever spoke. And a few days later, he passed, and we're all going to be fine. We had a great 86 years with him, and we're so blessed. But there is a safety and a protection that you feel, especially me as a young girl, when you're scared or life is hard and you go crawl in bed between your parents. There's nothing that can hurt you. And my dad had a way of making people feel like that. And I'll miss it. And I say these things in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
All right, well, Heather got off easy because my car story, really quick, I'm going to tell it, but the nature that I was, my dad had a new Buick, and I called the neighbor kids, some of their friends who lived, John McGinnis, he lived like 2 properties to the north. I said, hey, we didn't have cell phones back then, so we had real phones. And I said, hey, I'm going to hit a golf ball. I'm going to hit it into your yard, from my front yard. So he's like, oh, cool, hit it. So I go out there and I whack this golf ball. It goes about 2 inches off the deck, hits the curb across the street, comes right back at me. I duck, it hits my dad's new Buick right next to the keyhole in the trunk. And it has the dimples from the golf ball, the mark. I go in to tell my mom, my dad's going to kill me. And she's like, well, don't mention me. Maybe he won't say anything. Well, he's leaving to go on a trip, and he has his, for the airlines, and I can hear him yell, because of course he's put the key in and he sees the dent there. Yells at the top of his lungs, comes in the house, and we did one of these, the kitchen table. I was going to get beat. But he calmed down, and, you know, I think he wanted to choke me out, but he loved me. But, so that's my car story with that. But as my dad, I have a lot of memories, and I'm just going to share some memories. One of the things that I can remember at a very young age, very young, being home with my mom, my older brothers and sisters were in school, and I can remember laying on the heater because we had above a raised foundation so the vents would come to the floor. I remember looking out the window at these clouds, and I think I was probably 3 or so. That's my earliest memories, but I remember thinking, my dad works in those clouds. You know, I didn't know he flew. I just thought that he worked in the clouds, and I always just think, God, it's so cool. He gets to go to work and he works in those clouds, and I couldn't understand why. But I remember at a young age, my dad, I always looked up to him. And I remember one day I was young. I was probably about 7, and I was laying on his chest in his room, and he goes, Stuart, I have a headache. Give me some aspirin. I'm like, okay. So I go get him some Bayer aspirin, and he pops them like they're candy and chews them up. And I'm like, oh, I want to try that. So I do it. Disgusting. He didn't even flinch. And, but he always had that kind of character. I remember another time we were in the garage and I found these mouse traps and he goes, hey, look at this. And he puts a stick, he sets it, shows me how to set it, puts a stick in there and he goes, pretty crazy, huh? So he resets it, puts his finger in there. Doesn't even flinch. And I'm like, he's like, you try it. I'm like, heck no, I'm not trying it. But my dad always made sure that I had fun. And from a young age, some of you probably remember, I was kind of a pyro and my dad, it was kind of my dad's fault. He thinks that he was trying to curb my fire tendencies, but he used to let me go out to the curb. And we had a pine tree. I collected pine needles, and as long as I had the hose there, and if the hose was running, I could burn all these pine needles all I want. People would drive by and be like, your parents know what you're doing? Yeah, right there. I thought that was the best thing in the world, that he gave me that freedom. He wanted me to have fun. All it did is fuel my fire, no pun intended. But as a young age, we used to go to this go-kart park on Monday night for family night and rip around this track, gas powered, and we were always chasing Dad, and it was fun, and we always had those memories. My dad had motorcycles, we had mopeds. When it kind of got to me, my brothers kind of ruined it. Randy got chased by the cops, Mark broke his arm, so when I came around, they said no motorcycles, so I didn't get to do that till later in life. But I remember Saturday evenings as a family, we'd go over to racquetball world. My mom would swim, the sisters would go do their thing. I would always play racquetball with my dad, and he would let me win towards the end, and he would always smoke me, you know. But I always had these fun memories of playing racquetball with my dad. My dad was a teacher. He taught me at a very young age to fix things. This day and age, I get a flat tire, I go buy a new inner tube and put it in. Have somebody else do it. It's a lot easier. The inner tube's on the dirt bike. I know that's too much work. But when I was a kid, my dad would show me how to do it. He'd break the tube out, patch the kit, you know, rough it up, put patch it, be as good as new. He taught me in my early teens how to work on cars, how to change oil, how to change brakes, how to troubleshoot an engine, why isn't it running? He taught us all how to drive. You heard stories on that. His biggest thing was 10 and 2, you gotta draw with your fingertips. It's like when you're flying, you just gotta use your fingertips. And he would get on you about it. He taught me how to look out for my mom. And my dad was gone a lot, so he was like, I don't know why I'm crying because it's funny, but he's like, one of the things is he taught me how to shoot from a very young age. We belonged to a shooting range, but I remember one day he pulled me aside, he goes, listen, I'm on trips a lot. And he goes, if anyone ever comes in this house and is harming your mom, he goes, you go load that gun and you make sure you take care of her. And I was like, so, but he was, I'm turning like my dad here, he's down there. But it's like, it was so funny because he's like, the ammo's over here, the rifle's over here. It's a 22. I was smarter than that. I already had a clip loaded up, ready to go. So, I was looking out for my mom. I was always very proud of my father. He was such, my brother Randy said, and my sister Christy, we lived in Camelot. We did not know how good we had it. It was, it wasn't until we got in our own personal lives, like, oh my gosh, we had life so good. A lot of good memories. There's 9 of us, and we're close. And typical, we had our fights and our stats, but our parents, my mom and dad, provided a great life for us. One of my moments where I was so proud of my dad is we'd have career day, and this is in grade school, and my dad would show up in his, as I'm sure some of you saw, in his captain's uniform, airplanes that he flew in the Air Force. He'd hand out pins to all the kids. I just remember being so proud, like, that cool guy over there, that's my dad. That was me. My dad was always proud of me. He was excited when I became a cop. I think he was vicariously living through me. He constantly wanted to hear the stories. And even as he got older and his memory started to fade, he'd have me retell the stories, which I gladly did. But then he was especially excited when I was accepted into pilot training for LAPD. And I always laugh to this day. It's like, I think my dad was more excited that I was a pilot than I am. Not that I'm ungrateful, but I'm just a police officer that straps a helicopter to my back. And my dad was just the opposite. He was just so proud. And the day that I got my wings, he was there. I wanted him to pin my wings on, which he did. And he was so proud of me. He was just smiling ear to ear. And I remember just being so proud to have him, my dad, pin my wings. One of the things, really quick, is my dad and I, he has a sense of humor, and we've always bantered back and forth, especially as I've gotten older. And one of the things, I remember in 4th grade, he hit me up, he's like, Stu, your grades are terrible. And he goes, do you want to dig ditches the rest of your life? You need to get an education, you need to do the right thing. Or he goes, do you want to work at the dump? And I'm like, Dad, the dump? That's the best place in the world. I'm like, I'll put an application in tomorrow. And he just shook his head. I said, I'm getting F's. I'm going to work there. And but we always had this banter, and it went on through life. Everyone knows with Dad's cars is he had to get the best gas mileage. And with me, I swore I'd get the opposite. Just so I could banter with my dad. What kind of gas mileage? I got 30 miles a gallon. Stu, what'd you get? I go, I think 12. That's not good enough. Like, Dad, I fill it up, and when it says empty, I fill it up again, and it just keeps running. He would just shake his head. And then he'd ask me, later in life, he's like, so Stu, you date anybody? And I'm like, yeah, I'm dating 5. He's like, no, you're not. And we just go back and forth, back and forth. In his last days, it was an honor to be there for my dad. It was hard. He went downhill really fast, but I was glad that I was able to be there with him. The last probably 4 nights or 5 nights I stayed at, we had a care nurse that would stay from 7 in the morning to 7 at night. And I would stay there with him from 7 at night till 7 in the morning. And my mom hit me up, she goes, aren't you tired? And I'm like, no, I'm kind of it's kind of an honor, and I'm kind of on a high. I said, I've done a lot of, bad things in life where I've stayed up all night. The least I can do is hang out with my dad on his last days and care for him, so this is nothing. But I remember talking to my dad. He was unconscious, and they say hearing's the last thing to go, and I would play music for him, the kind of music he would listen to, obviously, and talk to him, and he just didn't want to go. I remember one of the nights, it was, I think, a Thursday night. He died on Saturday. Thursday night, he stopped breathing, and I was cheering him on. He stopped breathing, his pulse went to 0, and I was going to wake up everybody up once he was gone, and so I'm rubbing his chest. I'm like, Dad, good for you. You're moving to the other side. A minute later, starts breathing again. And, my sister Heather came in about an hour later, and I told her the story and she laughed. They always teased that I was the favorite, but they all say I'm the favorite. Everyone was the favorite. But Heather says, he probably heard your voice and he probably thought the party was still going, so he decided to hang out. So the next day when he stopped breathing, I swore to myself I wasn't going to say anything, so I just sat there. And inside I was like, come on, because it was his time. And I even told him, I told him a story about his ejections. I said, Dad, remember when you crashed? I said, because he always used to tell us, he would prepare with his flying, he would always prepare for the ejection. Every time he sat on the toilet, I know it's maybe graphic for some people, but every time he sat on the toilet, he would practice his maneuvers and how he would eject. So when the instant it happened, he knew exactly what to do. So as he was unconscious, I lay there. I go, Dad, it's your time to eject. I go, your body's disabled. You need to move on. You need to get out of here. That didn't work. Nothing worked. We even laughed about it the next day, the day before he finally died. And my mom, he was always frugal with his money, very, tight with it, but very, as everyone said, helped out a lot of people. But it was my mom's idea to tell him how much the day nurse was costing. And we all started laughing. No, I'm dead serious. We all started laughing, and it was me, my mom, and Heather, and we're sitting there laughing, and so I started teasing my dad. He was unconscious. I'm like, Dad, you realize that it's costing you this amount of money a day to keep you alive? And he coughed and choked. And we laughed even more. So we're like, even though in his last days before he went unconscious, with his dementia, it was sad because for about 6 months my dad's mind was gone. But he would I would see Chuck reappear and he would talk. And one of the things, just two more things and I'll be quiet. It's so funny. We're trying to get him ready to get into a shower, and his mind's gone, and he's with the walker, and we get him in there, and he goes to the lady that's going to give him a shower, and he just goes, "Don't you do any funny things now?" And I just thought, that's my dad. And then another thing is, this was I was up there for a week. I came home for a couple days to recoup, and my sister Anna called me and said, "Hey, Dad has stopped eating. He's not walking. He's bedridden, and he's not talking." And but 2 days prior to that, I was helping my mom, helping him go to the bathroom, and he with the dementia, he'd get agitated, and he'd get kind of agitated with my mom. So I go, "Hey, Mom, I'll go there and I'll help him out." So I'm helping him, and he just and Chuck came out again, and it was so funny. He goes, "Your mom keeps trying to touch me." And I go, "Dad, how do you think you had 9 kids?" And he took his walker, because at the toilet, and he backed up, and he turned towards me, and he smiled, and he goes, "Yeah, I think so." And I just made me laugh, because I thought, there's my dad again. So, again, I was proud that I was able to be there with him on his last days, and to see him take his final breaths, and the guy just lived the best life. Look at all the people that are here to see him. He was very loving, loved us all. We knew that he loved us, and he just made us feel great and special. And that's it. Thanks for coming.
Okay. My dad liked to make people happy. No matter how tall, how wide I got, or how cranky I was. My nickname was Rachel the Beautiful. My dad was a cheerleader with a megaphone and a beach chair that was just a little too small. He would cheer me on at the games, yelling, "Hit a country mile," or he would say, "Put Rachel in," if I had been on the bench too long, which is embarrassing. He also cheered me on through life. When I was in college and very discouraged, I could call him as long as it was after 5 p.m. and cheap rates applied. He would talk me through my worries and make me feel that I was going to be just fine. And when life was hard, Dad and Mom were there for help, always. When I needed thyroid surgery, I wasn't sure what I was going to do with my 2 youngest kids. Edith called and said, "The Holy Ghost told me to come get your 2 younger kids and take them home to California." Well, on the way up to Utah, my mom started getting sick. By the time they picked up Charlie and Joe and returned home, Mom was too sick to help. So Dad had to take care of the boys and Edith. He wiped bottoms, hands, and faces, in that order. But everyone survived, and I was thankful for the help. A few months later, we moved into a new home. Mom and Dad came to visit. Edith said the deck wasn't safe and that Chuck needed to build a fence around it. It was hard work. Dad looked at me and said, that darn Edith gets all the inspiration and I do all the damn work. He helped everyone. He drove me to Portland for school. We didn't have air conditioning or radio. You would have thought it was a miserable drive, but he told me such great stories that I found myself gripped to the steering wheel and enjoyed the time I had with him. He was a great dad, great grandpa, great father-in-law. In fact, you didn't know which one was the son-in-law and which one was the in-law, because I think he likes Matt more. As Chuck used to say, just between us girls, I'm going to miss him more than words can say. Can I say something? Just
when I think about my dad, I can remember him doing push-ups with Autumn and I on his back and him clapping his hands between every push-up. And I remember him running when he'd exercise and I'd ride my bike next to him. I remember one time he drove me to school and I said, Dad, just take me all the way to the classroom door. I about died. It was in a van and he drove all the way up to the lunch table. I knew something was going to happen. But he drove all the way up to the lunch tables and he loved to honk his horn when I was getting out of the car. I remember too, everybody knows about my beloved pet Sporty, who was a turtle. And I remember when he died, it was really traumatic. And my dad had put on this funeral and said all these good words. And he was in a box, and it was really to this day I can remember the funeral because he put so much work into it. And then he saw that I put a stamp on the turtle, and he could not believe I would waste a stamp on the turtle. And one of my best qualities of my dad is he made you feel like you were the most important person in the world. And he was so interested in our lives. And I remember I was married, and it was my last class I had to take before I graduated from college. And I was living in a different state, and it was math, and he knew all too well the hours he spent helping me with math in high school. And he said to me, if you get an A in this class, I will give you $100 to go do something fun with Kyle. And I remember after every single test, there was a payphone on campus. I would run to the payphone and call him. I would be so excited to call him and tell him how I'd done. And he would act like he had nothing in his entire life going on except to hear about my math test. And I think how he had a career, and he had 8 other children, and he had callings, and what was always going in my life was the most important thing to him. And I remember the last, when I heard that he was dying, I just wanted to be with him more than anything. And I flew down, and I remember I spent time braiding his hair because it gone long, and holding his hand. And I remember looking at him thinking everything in his life that he'd done that was so good, and what a good person he was. And I thought, I want to be when I die. I want to be you. I want to have lived a life like you and to have a child holding my hand thinking that he was truly one of the greatest people that ever lived. And I say this in Jesus Christ, amen.
So, as Randy talked about, my dad loved life. He just loved it, and he just said there's just so many great things about it. And Randy talked about how we would wake up some mornings and he'd say, I have a trip, who wants to go? And he'd take 1 or 2 of us because he wanted us to enjoy life too, and he wanted us to experience all these neat things that life had to offer. And this one time he was going to Hawaii, and I hadn't been to Hawaii before, and it was a really quick trip, and I was 14 and I was in 8th grade, and so I went along with him, and the stewardess found out that I was the pilot's daughter, so they snuck me up to first class, and of course I slept the whole way and had good food, and we got in late, and we got a couple hours sleep, and my dad wanted me to experience Hawaii, so he took me snorkeling, and we got some good food, and we saw some sights, and it was a quick trip, so he had to fly overnight. So we got back on, and of course, I was sleeping again in first class. And we got back to LAX, and he said, I am so tired. So we had this big blue Buick that he left, and I could scoot right next to him. He said, just come sit next to me. I'm just steer for me. And so, he really hadn't gotten any sleep because he was being so much fun with me, and he fell asleep with his foot on the accelerator, and we were hauling down the 5 freeway with his foot stuck on it. I'm 14 and swerving in and out of traffic. Chuck wakes up, says some choice words, "Dear, you son of a gun." You know, he wasn't mad at me, but it was just Chuck, and he was just fun and kind, and he just, sometimes I feel. Sometimes I feel fearful in life.